All right, in the Impact segment tonight, Abdul Muttalib's father reportedly alerted American authorities to his son's extremist tendencies, yet the terror suspect was allowed to keep his multiple entry visa to the U.S. and was not put on a no-fly list. The question, is the Obama administration ignoring warning signs and putting us at risk? A new Rasmussen poll shows 79% of Americans think it's likely there'll be another terrorist attack here in the next year. That's up 30 points since August. Joining us now from Washington, Fox News contributor and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Charles, you've been all over this lately. You know, fighting terror, the war on terror is a culture. It's a mentality. Are we sending these terrorists and would-be jihadists the right message?
Well, I think when the Obama administration came into office, they made it clear that they considered the war on terror either a mistake on our part or over. The word isn't used. The Secretary of Homeland Security speaks about man-made disasters in referring to terrorism, and the whole idea was to return to a pre-9/11 mentality as seen, for example, most egregiously by putting Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the architect of 9/11, in a civilian court in Manhattan, which is entirely inappropriate, particularly in wartime. So it's this concept that we are not exactly in a war and that we're dealing with, as Obama himself said yesterday, isolated extremists, in referring to the guy who tried to bring down the plane over Detroit. That tells you that we are approaching this entirely the wrong way.
Hey, Charles, let me take that one step further. Isolated extremist. Yesterday, we heard today, alleged, Obama using the word alleged, and then a little bit later, earlier today, he said it was an attempt at terror. Boy, I got to tell you, I'm on a flight with 295 other people, and I see a guy on fire. It doesn't seem like an attempted terrorist attack. It seems like the real thing. So the point is our president sending the signal to the terrorists?
And remember, in the statement yesterday, he referred to him as a suspect. Yeah. You know, a suspect is what you call a guy that you arrest in a burglary. A terrorist or an enemy combatant is what you call a guy that you find on the battlefield. That airplane was a battlefield. And that's what the Obama administration refuses to acknowledge. In fact, even today, Obama spoke about him as an extremist. Well, look, a guy who shoots an abortion doctor is an extremist. But there aren't cells of them all around the world exploding trains and planes and discos and slaughtering people all around the world. That's an extremist. This is a certain kind of extremism. And it's international, and it's at war with us. It's called jihadism, Islamist radicalism, and he won't use that word. He refuses to. If you can't name the enemy, how do you fight the enemy?
Charles, we're kind of pinpointing Yemen as a kind of a hotbed, if not the hotbed of terrorist activity. What do we do there? What's the right solution? How do we handle Yemen?
Well, here's how you start, and I heard you with General Clark a little earlier. You start by not emptying Guantanamo. There are about 50 to 80 Yemenis in Guantanamo, and Obama is hell-bent on emptying Guantanamo, and he's trying to arrange for the Yemenis to return to their home country. Well, we know exactly what's going to happen. We already know that two of the leaders of al-Qaeda in Yemen are graduates of Gitmo, released in the Bush years, who went to to Saudi Arabia to rehab. Graduates of that rehab, and obviously successful, who end up now being the masterminds in a lot of attacks against us and our allies in the region. So, number one, you end this obsession with emptying our jails. We are in war. Now, with a civilian, you've got to charge a guy and you can't hold him indefinitely. But in wartime, in all wars, all countries, all peoples, you're allowed to hold enemy combatants until the end of the war. Now, the left will argue, well, the war is endless. Well, it's not endless because of us. We're ready to end the war tomorrow. It's al-Qaeda that has declared endless war against us. You know, and as long as that war is ongoing, we have every right to keep all of these miscreants in Guantanamo. Why have to go and fight a third war after Iraq and Afghanistan in Yemen when you have many of these people under control in Guantanamo today? That is step number one.
Charles, you know, let's put ourselves in the place of the al-Qaeda leadership, and we're looking across the ocean over there, and we see Janet Napolitano heading the opposition. Now, I got to think, I'm thinking, boy, if that's all they can come up with, should she step down? Should Obama replace Janet Napolitano?
Well, you know, if you're a Yemeni and you're looking at her and you're trembling in your boots. She's obviously in this job. She was a decent governor of Arizona. She's way over her head. It is absurd having her running this department. She said on Sunday all day that the system worked. She had to reverse that after a day of ridicule on Monday. But it's obvious what her mindset is. And remember, her department issued a report in March in which she warned about the threats of terrorism or man-made disasters, and she singled out for worry returning American soldiers who would join right-wing extremists here at home and commit acts of terror. Now, that's the mindset of this department. She later had to apologize. But again, and this also starts at the top with the president, they do not consider the war on terror as a real war. They see it as an isolated acts of criminality, and that's why the policy is flawed. And she, who's a believer in it, really has to go.
All right, Charles Krauthammer, thank you very much for joining us. Okay, coming up, Republicans, are they trying to politicize the airline bombing attempt, and will this help the GOP get votes in 2010? And later, should airport security pay extra attention to Muslims who fit the terror profile? We'll debate it. We'll be right back.